Okay, so Malignant is the newest film directed by James Wan. He previously directed the first two Conjuring movies, the first two Insidious movies, the first Saw movie. And in this movie, it stars a woman played by Annabelle Wallis. She keeps getting these visions of very disturbing, gruesome murders that are actually happening in real time. And she believes that there's a connection to all this, and she believes that she's connected to the killer in some way, and horror and chaos ensue. So, this movie I wasn't really too interested in, to be honest. James Wan, I knew he was involved with this movie, but the trailers just didn't interest me that much. The trailers were like, they didn't really show anything that was like new or interesting or anything that was like brand new or anything game changing in any way. I was like, how could James Wan do something like this? It just looked like a standard generic horror movie. Like, why would he backtrack to a movie like this that's just not really reinventing the genre in any way? And so I saw this movie, and yeah. There's a lot to talk about with this movie, so I'm just going to try to keep this spoiler-free as possible. And honestly, I don't even know what kind of grade I'll give this movie, because there's a lot that needs to be said about this movie. There really does. And I don't know where to begin, really. I guess let's just start with the things I liked. First off, Annabelle Wallis, I thought she was really good in this movie. She's an actress that I just never really like thought of that much. I never really imagined her in a lot of movies or thought of her well in other movies. Like, she was in that Mummy movie with Tom Cruise, which was awful. And here she's actually really good as her character. She has like all these past traumas, and she handles it very well. She handles her scary scenes very well. She handles the drama of the emotional weight of the movie very well. That her performance is great, and her performance carries a lot of this movie. Also, there's a lot of like themes that are kind of handled well for the most parts, because like unfortunately they kind of just address them, and it's like, oh, okay, you're not gonna follow through on that. I don't know why, but it's like, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting angle to take with this movie. At least at first, until you get into the really crazy stuff that happens in this movie. The cinematography is absolutely stunning throughout this movie. It's done by Michael Burgess, I believe his name. Like, I heard that this movie was inspired by a lot of Italian horror movies, and like looking into it, yeah, I can kind of see why, especially cinematography-wise. It looks like, they try to mimic the style of those movies a bit. And I would say the movie is fairly scary throughout. I would say the movie gets scarier as the movie goes on. And the trailers of this movie actually show a lot of the scares in the first act, or at least the first half of the movie. And I'm really glad, because the movie just gets scarier, and honestly, it just gets even more insane as the movie goes on. This may be the most insane movie I've seen this year. And unlike something like Cats was just insane and just awful, this movie is insane, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. I couldn't take my eyes off Cats, but that's for a different reason. That was just horrifying. This is intentionally horrifying, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. This movie is completely unpredictable. I would say the best way to experience this movie is to just go in without knowing a single thing. And the trailers actually did a good job of that. They didn't show a whole lot that happens in this movie. They really shouldn't have. This movie, again, it's just insane. Like, I couldn't predict like a lot of the things that are going to happen in this movie. But, oh my god, this movie is just insane. I can't keep saying that enough. This movie is just nuts. So let's get into what I really didn't care for. There were a few things I just really didn't care for in this movie. First off, the music by Joseph Bishara is just uneven. It just feels loud and bombastic. It's just, I don't know, like, what it's trying to convey. Like, was it trying to mimic, like, again, Italian horror movies, or was it trying to mimic movies that are, like, really cheesy or so campy that they're just so bad that it's good? And that also leads into something else about this movie. The tone is just very uneven throughout this entire movie. Like, there are times where it's like the horror is actually very serious, but then it becomes way too campy. It just kind of felt uneven at times, and there were moments where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is James Wan doing with this movie? Because there are so many moments in this movie where I just kind of want to laugh at the absurdity of it, but I also kind of want to be like, okay, that's actually really scary. But a lot of the times, it's just very uneven throughout the majority of the movie. And I don't know, like, what they're trying to do. Is it, like, trying to be a movie that's so bad it's good? Or are they trying to be, like, this campy horror movie that's also very serious at the same time? Because I feel like they tried to do both, and maybe it didn't work out as well as they did. So yeah, it tries to be cheesy, it tries to be serious, it all takes place in modern times, and it just, maybe it didn't work out as well as they thought it would. Also, there's a ton of secondary characters in this movie that just weren't that great. It's like the sister in the movie. It's not like her performance was bad, it's just, she didn't leave much of an impression on me. Almost no one else leaves an impression on me other than Annabelle Wallis. Also, the police officers in this movie, who may be the dumbest police officers I've seen in a movie. Wow, like, oh my, how dumb, how annoying can these characters be? And also, like, it does that thing, like, I just joked about this with the MCU, how, you know, and a lot of times when they have serious moments in those movies, they follow up with a joke. Here they did that too, and it just became annoying. Like, stupid humor with the cops was just unfunny and was just awkward. And it was even more obnoxious than, like, some of the insane stuff that happens in this movie. The CGI. There's a lot of CGI in this movie that I just did not care for. And again, I don't know if it's because they're, like, trying to make it look so campy and look so cheesy and ridiculous, or they just ran out of money. I just don't know. Because, like, there are times where it's like, it looks really good. It's like, is that practical or not? Or is that CGI? And it actually looks really good. But then sometimes the CGI just looks awful. And I don't know if this movie was, like, made to be intentionally bad, or made to be, like, not necessarily intentionally bad, but more like intentionally campy. Like, this may be the most campy horror movie I've seen since, I don't know, Drag Me to Hell. I don't know. Also, it's not really for the people with weak stomachs. Like, I had to look away at a few moments, mainly during the opening credits, a little bit towards the end, but for the most part, I just couldn't take my eyes off it. This movie is insane I couldn't imagine, like, what this movie was really going to be about, but I did not expect anything to happen in this movie. I really didn't. So, it's kind of hard to grade a movie like this. Annabelle Wallis is great, the cinematography is great, it is pretty scary, it is imaginative, it's completely unpredictable, but I just feel mixed about the tone overall. I don't like some of the characters, I don't really care for the CGI, and I guess it really depends on how you feel about campy horror movies. If you like them, give this a chance. It's kind of hard to say I really recommend watching this movie because, you know, there's just so much I just can't unsee from this movie. I really just can't unsee anything from this. So, I mean, it is worth watching at some point. Just don't eat before watching it. Or don't eat after you watch it. Or don't eat during it. Just think about what crosses a line for you before watching this movie, and then decide from there. That's really all I can really say about Malignant without really spoiling it. Is that just go in with an open mind and an empty stomach. So I'll give Malignant for right now 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. There's a lot that needs to be said about this movie that I just don't want to give away right now. It's just nuts. It's just, what were they on when they made this? What were they on when they wrote this? I really just don't know. So did you see Malignant at all? What did you think of it? Because I saw it yesterday, and I'm still kind of processing a lot that happened. I don't know. So did you see it? What's your favorite movie by James Wan? He's done, you know, those movies I mentioned, plus Aquaman and Furious 7. Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and I can't unsee some of those things. I just can't.